Uncle Jim, this is for you, but also for anybody else that is over the age of 50 and is trying to work their way back into some stability and strengthening here in a low impact way. Okay? So I am going to be using a few props. However, you can completely omit them. You do not have to use them, but I will show you some good uses for these very small props that you can take anywhere with you, which is wonderful. I'll show you what to do with them and kind of why we're doing it, and kind of the emphasis of the muscles that we're working and the benefit that they will give you. All right, so we are going to start with a small ball. Again, you don't have to use one, but we're going to come into a position where you're lying down onto a mat or a soft surface, and we're going to do a bridge series, okay? So you come down onto your back. The ball, if you choose to use it, or you can even use like a pillow, that'll work just fine. Bring that ball in between your thighs, upper thighs here, towards your pelvis. Now your arms are down to your sides. You're opening the collarbones nice and wide, and you're melting the back of your ribs down against the surface underneath you. So we want to be in a neutral position of your pelvis to start, meaning you're not tucking and you're not arching your lower back, okay? So we're in a neutral position. If I had a glass of water resting on top of my pubic bone or on my pelvis, it would be level, ideally, and it would not be spilling in between my legs or spilling into my belly button. Okay, so your feet are flat, hip distance apart, and they're parallel. Arms are down. We're going to begin small range of motion for your bridging. You have the ball in between your thighs. You're giving it a slight squeeze, which is going to activate your pelvic floor and your inner thighs. You're pressing down into all 4 points of your feet, pressing into the arms and the triceps, and lifting just a couple inches above the floor, and lower right back down. Press into the feet, lift just a couple inches up, back down. Press and lift just slightly, right back down. Little lift, little lower. Good, you can do as many as you want. I would say about 10 is a good number. We'll go 2 more here. All right, now once you've progressed past that point, we're gonna come up higher. So same concept, you're squeezing onto the ball, engaging the inner thighs, pelvic floor, and now your glutes and your hamstrings more so to lift yourself all the way up to full bridge, if that's available for you today. Now when you do come all the way up, we want to make sure that you're resting onto the shoulder blades, not on the neck, okay? You're just on the shoulder blades. We want the ribs to be melted down. We don't want them to be protruding up. So close your ribs. Think of squeezing your booty and pressing your hips up to the ceiling. I always think of taking my knees to the other side of the room, and that helps to lengthen the front of the hips while keeping my back from arching. All right, and then we lower right back down to the floor. Again, press into all 4 corners of your feet, squeeze and lift straight up. Good, and then lower right back down. Again, do as many as you would like. 10 is usually a great number, about 6 to 10. Make sure your eye gaze is straight up to the ceiling so we keep the neck long. Lift, lower. As you're lifting and lowering, make sure your pelvis is staying level. We don't want any rocking and rolling as we're going up. You may find that you have one side that's maybe a little weaker than the other, and you may feel some of that wobbling. Pilates is wonderful at identifying your weaker side, so then you know you need to work on that side a little bit more. A little up and down. Let's do 1 more, and we're going to stay at the top here. So we come up and hold it. Now again, this is when you've progressed to having that endurance to stay lifted while in good form. Now we're going to squeeze the ball. If you're using a ball, squeeze it. Little tiny squeezes, nothing crazy, but just again to emphasize the inner thigh pelvic floor engagement. Little in, squeeze. We'll do 5 more. 4, 3, 2. Now hold your squeeze. Good, that isometric contraction here, those inner thighs, and lower right back down. Very good. All right, once again, we're going to progress a little bit. So all of these are progressions. Think of them as stair steps. You know, start with the little tiny lift and lowers, then progress to the next ones here. All right, so we are going to come back up if you've progressed to this point only, okay? We always want to make sure we're stable and working effectively. We're going to transfer our weight into one foot, okay? Transfer the weight to one foot and elevate the opposite heel up from the ground. Lower, transfer the weight to the opposite foot and elevate the opposite heel from the ground. Transfer, lift, lower, transfer, lift, lower. Again, once you've progressed past that point, transfer the weight into one foot and lift the opposite foot a couple inches completely above the surface. Lower down, shift the weight back over, and again, lift the opposite foot up, back down. Now, if you're feeling a lot of instability in your hips and your lower back, then go back to the previous one. Just lift your heels until you can find that stability and that muscle endurance, then transition to the harder one. There's no prize for doing something out of what you should be doing. Your body. Go with your strength here. All right. Both feet come down. Lower the pelvis to the floor. Great. Now I'm going to take this ball out and I'm going to show you just briefly how the band can be utilized in a very similar way to what we were just doing with those exercises, but it just gives you a different emphasis, muscular emphasis. So bring your band around your thighs. You can do this with one of the flex bands that are really long and just tie the two ends together and make the loop as well, and that works. So similar here, we're going back to your bridge. Arms are down, your pelvis is neutral, the back of your ribs are melted to the floor. Now instead of squeezing in on the ball like we were doing before, now you're going to be slightly pressing out on the band that's around your thighs. So we're switching that muscle emphasis from the inner thighs or the adductors to now your abductors, abductors, to the outsides of your legs, okay? All right, but we do the same sequence as we did before, so I'm going to go through it just briefly. So you'll have all 4 points of your feet pressing into the floor. You will lift just a couple inches and tap the booty down. Lift a couple inches and down. All the while, you're pressing the legs slightly out into the sides of the band. Good. Up and down. Once you've progressed past that, you can come up higher, making sure we never go onto the neck, but you're onto the tips of those shoulder blades with the ribs connected down. We're still keeping that consistent press out on the band, and we lower straight back down. Pressing out on the band, we lift and lower. Again, I always think of sending my knees straight forward so the hips will rise. And down. Lift and down. Now we're going to stay up here. Now instead of squeezing that ball, you're going to pulse the legs out into the sides of the band. Press out, out, out. Again, it's not a crazy range of motion. This is very small, very controlled. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Lower down. Again, these are all progressions. So let's progress back up. Shift your weight into one heel or one foot, elevating the opposite heel above the floor. You still have that consistent press out on your band. Drop the heel, shift the weight into the foot, and then elevate opposite heel up. All right, so do that a few times. When you, again, gain that stability, gain that endurance, then shift to one side, lift the foot up a couple inches. Drop down, shift, lift a couple inches. Make sure you're pressing the arms down into the floor. That'll help keep your chest open, and it helps a little bit with your balance here, keeping everything secured and stable while you're moving one leg off the floor. All right. Both feet come back down. Level out those hips. Lower to the floor. All right, we're gonna take this band off. And the next one we're gonna do without any props at all. So, both feet are still hip distance apart, parallel. Just try to make sure your knees are tracking with your hip bones and all the way through your big and second toe. Okay, so we're not collapsing in and we're not V'ing them out. If you do have a tendency to do one of those, then you can use, again, the prop. If you're a collapser, then it's really good to think of the band around your thighs and pressing out on the band, okay? And then opposite, if you are a V person, then put the ball in between the thighs and you'll encourage your inner thighs to strengthen a little bit more, okay? But we are gonna work now on your pelvic placement, so imprint and neutral. So I'm gonna bring my arms up just so you can see my side here. So the back of the ribs are melted. Now again, we talked about that glass of water. So pretend you have the glass of water resting onto your pubic bone and you want it to be level. You do not want that glass of water to spill one way or the other. So you want to make sure that that pelvis is equal from side to side. And then let's say we want to go into an imprinted position. So imprint means that you take your lower back and you imprint it into the floor. So you're tucking the pelvis under. If you have that glass of water, it would spill into your belly button. All right, so you're tucking the pelvis under just a little bit, engaging those abdominals. And then return it to neutral, to where the glass is level. All right, and then imprint. I always kind of think of suspenders. Like I pretend I have suspenders attached to my bottom rib and to my hip bones. And when I'm going into an imprinted position, those suspenders are shortening. Yeah? And then lengthening when I return to neutral. So you imprint, the suspenders shorten, or your glass of water spills into your belly button, and release it out. All right, now we're going to keep the imprint. So those suspenders are short in the front side of the body. Now we're going to elevate one leg, again, a couple inches above the floor, and drop it down. Opposite one, a couple inches from the floor. Back down, similar to what we were doing before a little bit. And then once you have progressed past this point to where this feels easy peasy, then go ahead and bring the leg all the way up to a tabletop position. So tabletop is 90 degrees from your knee to your hip bone, and then your shin is ideally parallel to the floor, okay? Tabletop to where I can eat my dinner plate off of your shin without it falling over, right? And then lower down. So all the while, we are keeping your imprinted position at this point, trying to really stabilize and strengthen those lower abdominals. All right, and then once again, when you've progressed past this point, keeping the imprint, bring one leg at a time up to tabletop. Now, if you immediately feel your lower back arch and your suspenders lengthen in the front side of the body, then return to the single leg. Engage the abdominals, re-find that connection, and then return back to your single, okay? Until you have the ability, you have the strength, you have the endurance in those abdominals to be able to bring those legs up to tabletop without putting any stress or strain on your lower back, all right? And then you can always stay here and just challenge that endurance, okay? All right. Now we're gonna work on your upper abdominals here. So feet are flat to the floor, once again, hip distance apart, parallel. You can return to your neutral position of your pelvis, all right? So this is where we're not shortening, we're not imprinting. But if you are a person who has an excessive arch, like your back is really, really arched, then I do want to encourage you to stay in an imprinted position just to really challenge and train those abdominals to stay short, okay? All right, but upper body flexion. So arms are up to the ceiling, your eye gaze is straight up to the ceiling. We're going to initiate this movement always with a head nod. You bring your chin slightly to your chest. That's going to lengthen the back of your neck, shorten the front, kind of that suspender action again, to bring your neck into a good position. And then we're going to engage the abdominals and curl up. Good. We inhale, staying here, again challenging that endurance, and then lower everything back down. Eye gaze returns back up to the ceiling. Inhale, nod the chin to the chest. Exhale, bring your ribs closer to your hip bones as you curl up. Your eye gaze is right about the top of your knees at this point. Lower back down. Now, if you feel any strain to your neck, like you're not feeling it in your abdominals and it's just all in your neck, which definitely happens to me a lot, then I'm going to give you a little tip. This is awesome. So grab back onto your band, loop your thumbs into it, make sure it's lengthened out. All right, put your thumbs into it here, and then you're going to take that band and bring it behind your head, okay, just right behind the base of your skull. Your elbows are going to be bent, elbow bones looking straight up to the ceiling. Now again, you nod the chin just as we did before, but now you curl up into flexion, but your head is now kind of resting in this little hammock that you just created with your band, and then lower back down. Good. Inhale, nod the chin. Exhale, curl up into your upper body flexed position. Inhale to stay. Exhale to lower down. So it's a really nice way to alleviate that stress and strain on your neck while still being able to work those upper abdominals in upper body flexion. All right, you can always stay up here and then check in with your abdominals and make sure you haven't lost the connection. You can always come back into that little imprinted position and begin pulsing. We go 5, 4, 3, 2, uphold, inhale, exhale, lower all the way back down. Awesome. All right. There's so much more we can do, even just in these couple positions that we did. But I will come back and give you some more videos at a later time. But try those, see if we can gain the stability while we're working with mobility and gaining that muscle endurance. All right. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did, and I will definitely bring you some more videos on this more low impact, over 50 workout. All right, thank you.